To Gittin. Let us start on Hey on the base, 3 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Bar Chana, I see Gita. Rabbi Bar Chana brought a get. Palga ichtav kamei, upalga lo ichtav kamei. But only half of it was written down in front of him. The other half wasn't. Also, coming to Rabbi Elazar, he came in front of Rabbi Elazar. He says, "Is it okay?" Amarle, so Rabbi Elazar said, "I feel shita achaz lashma." Even if they only wrote in front of you one line for the purpose of lishma, one line. Toso says, meaning if you say only the first line, you saw that only the first line was written with the right intent. Rashi says it means that you saw the line that had on it the name and the date and the place. So as long as it had only one of the most important lines, it's okay. Shuvin, that's all you need. Rav Ashi said on the top of 6a, I feel kan kulmis v'kan megilta. Rav Ashi says you don't even need to see one line, even if you only heard the sound of the quill. Rashi says the sound of the quill writing or the sound of the preparation of the parchment and the quill. That when you have to cut the quill, the sofer is patchking around. Mekan Megilta and the sound of the scroll, even if you only heard those sounds, it's going to be sufficient. Indeed, Tanya Kavase de Rav Ashi, there's a brisa that supports Rav Ashi's approach, which is that as long as you only heard the sound, it's as though you heard enough, because it says, maybe get me Medina Sayam, if you bring a get from overseas, afilu hu bebayis v'sofer ba'aliyah, even if the agent who brought it was in the house and the scribe was in the roof, or hu ba'aliyah, or the agent was in the roof, v'sofer bebayis, and the scribe was in the house, nafilu nichnas v'yotze kolam kulo, even if he was going in and out the whole day, kosher. It's still going to be kosher. So who buys it so for Baaliyah, how will be okay if he's in a different section of the house? So it must be I'll have to go into Shamaka and Kolmas or Kamagilta. All the agent did was hear the sound of the parchment or the scroll being prepared, or the quill, and still that's sufficient. So the Gemara wants to understand this brisa. Amar Mara, feel nechnas v'yotze kol yom kulo kosher. Even if he goes in and out the whole day, it's kosher. So the Gemara says, who's the he? Man, ilay mashliach. If you want to say that he is the agent, hashtuhu b'bayis v'sofer ba'aliyah. Well, you want to say, well, he's in the house and the scribe is in the upper chamber, delo chazilay, where he doesn't see him at all. Amar's kosher. Nichnas v'yotze mibaye. Well, of course he's going into the actual house, in and out throughout the day, of course it's going to be kosher. Ella sofer, must be that even if the scribe goes in and out throughout the day, it's kosher. Well, pshita, why would they think it's not kosher? Because he goes in and out, we're going to disqualify it. So the Gemara says, no, the scribe in the middle of the day went out to the marketplace and then he came back. You might have said, Inish achrine ashkechei. We might have said, well, he's lost his intention by the fact that he went out to the market during the process of writing it. He lost his focus, and therefore it's disqualified. Kamashma, we don't say that. Itmar. So now the Gemara says, what's the story with respect to Babylon? Rav said with respect to Babylon, Eretz Yisrael Gittin. Babylon is like the land of Israel with respect to divorces, meaning to say you don't need to say b'fanai nechtav u'b'fanai nechtam, that it's like the land of Israel. And Shmuel Amar Kechutzlar. Shmuel says that Babylon is like Medina Sayam. It's like, that you would need to say it. So what's the nature of their dispute? It must be that what we're talking about here is that they're not experts lishma, and so we would say that that's the reason why in general you need to say funny nothing. But in Babylon they have yeshivas, so there are experts, Ani Gemiri, and so therefore Rav says they're like the land of Israel because they know the halacha in Babylon. Umar Savar, where Shmuel says why do we need to say funny nothing? Because we want to make sure it's officially certified. Vahani And also in Babylon, they don't have any people to certify the documents that come from Babylon to Israel or vice versa. The Gemara says, with Tizbar, you can't take that approach. We say, even according to Rabba, who says that the whole reason is because of the Fanei Neftam, we said he agrees with Rabba that we also have to be worried about certification. So everybody says, both Rav and Shmuel say the reason is we need to certify it. But Rav says it's like Eretz Yisrael. Rav Savar Kivin Ika Masifta, because there are yeshivas there, Mishkach Shlichet. So therefore, it's going to be common that people go back and forth, and so therefore people are going to be able to officially certify the signatures. Shmuel Savar, you think the guy Shmuel says Masifta Begir Sayo to read it? You think the people in the yeshiva know anything about the signatures? They're studying the Daf Yomi. They're studying the Gemara. They don't know anything about the yeshiva. They don't know about the signatures. They're not in that. They're not holding. Therefore, they have to say Fanei Neftam. So too, we learned in Marnami Amar Rabbi Abba Amar Rav Huna that Rav Huna taught Asino Atzmeinu beBavel ke'Eretz Yisrael Gittin. Now Rav Huna says we made ourselves in Babylon like the land of Israel with respect to Gittin, meaning to say that in Babylon they don't have to say Fanei Neftam. So Masiv Rabbi Yirmiyah that we challenge this because Rabbi Yirmiyah challenges because Rabbi Yehuda says Mirakem u'Mizrach v'Rekem k'Mizrach. It says in our Mishnah what are the limits of where you have to say Fanei Neftam from Rekem to the east, and Rekem is like the east that you have to say that's out of Israel. Ashkelon Dharm, and Ashkelon is like the south. Akko at Safon, but Akko Katzafon. Akko is the northernmost point, and Bavel is Iraq. So Bavel with Safona. Eretz Yisrael come. Babylon is north of Israel, so of course you'd have to say it. So how could Rav Huna say you don't? Jeremiah says, God said to me, Mitzapon tipatach hara. From the north, the problems will start. The problems always come from the north. Tanan Rabbi Meir Omer Akko Eretz Yisrael Gittin, and Akko is like Israel, is like the land of Israel. The north of that is a problem. I feel Rabbi Meir will come around about Akko, the Mikrava. But even Rabbi Meir, he says Akko is like Israel because it's close. Of a bubble, the Merachaka, the Merchaka low, but Babel is far away. It should not be considered part of the land of Israel for Gittin. So the Gemara says, "So most of Faraka." So Rabbi Yirmiyah challenged this. He brought this question, and when he answered it, he said, "L'barmi Babel." It says Babel's the exception. Everything north of Akko is not Israel, except for Babel. Except for Babel. Babel is sui generis. Ad Heichan hi Babel. So what are the limits of Babylon? Which we're going to say that if you're in those limits, you're going to not have to say Fanei Neftam because you're part of like Eretz Yisrael for Gittin. So it says Rapapa k'machokas leYuchsin kach machokas leGittin. Well, we know that elsewhere in Shas they have a machokas, the end of Kedushin, that we say that which is the best place with respect to Yuchsin, we can marry some. And there we have a dispute there as to what are the limits. So just like we have a dispute over there, so too we have a dispute over here. Rav Yosef Amar Machokas LaYuchsin and we'll get in Divrei HaKol at Arba Tinyana the Gishra. So he says there's only a Machokas by Yuchsin, but with respect to divorce, everybody says it's till the Aravashniya Hasmuchala Gesher. Rashi says so. The second willow next to the bridge, they knew where that was. Arba Tinyana de Gisher. Rav Chisda Matriach. Rav Chisda even required b'fanei Neftam from Aktispon or Bei Archir. He required if you're bringing the get from Aktispon to Bei Archir, but me Bei Archir lo Kitzpon lo Matriach. But he did not require it from Bei Archir to Akitzpon. So must be he required it only from Akitzpon to Bei Archir because there they weren't. Must be in Aktispon. They weren't experts in Lashma. So that's why from there he didn't. He required it, but it can't be because the certification, because they're always going back and forth between the two places. So they would have the same law. The Gemara says, must be Rav Chisda's other position, because they're not experts. But from Archer to Kitzbon, they know the halacha. The Gemara says, well, it can't be. But Rabba is like the Rabba. We've already said this several times. Even according to the one that says they're not experts in Lashma, he agrees that because of certification, it would be a problem. And so therefore, if one of the places requires it for a certification, the other one should also. So everybody says we require certification. So what's the reason why the two places are different? From a kid's phone to our chair, they go to the market in our chair, and therefore people in our chair know their signatures. But from our chair to a kid's phone, people in our kid's phone know their signatures, and so therefore they don't need to say it because our kid's phone people recognize their signatures. But the people from our chair don't know the signatures of our kids' phone because they're busy going to the marketplace, so they're not looking at the signatures. He required it even from one row of houses on one side of the public domain across the alley, across the public thoroughfare to the other side. From even one group of three houses to another group of three houses. The Rabbi said even within one cluster of houses, he required it. How can it be? Rabba's explanation was because of certification of the witnesses. Well, if you're bringing it right to the court to the woman right within one cluster of houses, of course everybody there knows each other. So Gemara says, yeah. Well, Shani b'nei Mechuzah denied. Well, Rabba lived in Mechuzah, and the people from Mechuzah they're always moving. You don't recognize their signatures. Nobody stays in one place there, and that's why Tosfos says. Bottom Tosfos Mikam Posik Rabbeinu Tam that Rabbeinu Tam rules. Halacha Ma'isa Tahashta B'Zman Hazeh Tzarech Omer B'Kol Makom B'Fanei Nachlam B'Fanei Nachlam. Now we always have to say it, and even though we rule like Rava, because who says it's about certification, nevertheless, now we always have to say it because we're always moving around. Everybody's going to different Airbnb. So now the Gemara says, Rav Chanan told us the following story. What he told us was Rav Kahana Aisi Gita. Rav Kahana once brought a get. V'lo Yadana. I don't know if he brought a Misura or Nardai, if he brought it from Rav's yeshiva to Shmuel's, or from Surah to Narda, or Minarda or Surah, from Shmuel's to Rav. We don't remember. Also, Kamei the Rav, he went in front of Rav. That Rav Kahana went to Rav. He said, "Do I need to say b'fanei nachlam?" We don't know if he's traveling to Nardai or if he just showed up with it. He said, "You don't need to say it. We're both within Bavel, and Bavel's like Eretz Yisrael. So if you're traveling it within Bavel, you don't need to say it. We're on top of Bavel and Beis. V'yavdis ahanis. But if you did it, it will help. What does it mean, my yavdis ahanis? What does it help? Yeah, it's a leniency to say b'fanei nachlam. It's a big leniency because once the agent says it, then it means that the husband can no longer challenge the get. So it's a big leniency to allow you to say it. Kedetanya, like we learned a similar source. Once a person brought a get in front of Rabbi Shmuel and he said, do I need to say this phrase? Amarlo, B'ni Mehechanata. He said, where are you from? Amarlo, Rabbi Mikfar Sisai. He says, I come from Kfar Sisai. Amarlo, says you need to say it so you don't require the witnesses. So after he left, Rabbi Eloi came in. He says, Rabbi Valo Kfar Sisai Muvos B'Tchum Eretz Yisrael V'Krobo Tzipori Yosef Yaakov. Kfar Sisai is contained within the boundaries of Israel. It's closer to Tzipori than Akko. It's not Rameir Omer Akko Eretz Yisrael Gittin. And Akko was like Israel. Afilu Rabbana Lo Poligil Ed Rameir Alba Akko the Merchakal V'Kfar Sisai the Mekarvelo. Even the Rabbana would admit that it's part of Eretz Yisrael. You wouldn't be required to say it. Amarlo Shetok B'ni says quiet. Shtok Kol V'Yatza Davar B'Atar Yatza. So he's saying the leniency has been issued. The whole idea of saying Fanei Nachlam is a leniency. We issued the leniency here that you could say it in this place. Why is it a leniency? Because then the witnesses can challenge it. So therefore, once we've given this ruling, stop making problems and take away this total certification of the get. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, so the Gemara says, I don't understand this. The Gemara says it was clear to Rabbi, that Rabbi Eloi was not arguing with his Rebbe. He's agreeing with Rabbi Yishmael that you're not required to do it. He said that you're not obligated. He said that even Rabbi Yishmael said you should do this so that you don't have to bring witnesses. So why is Rabbi Eloi challenging him? So the Gemara says when they told Rabbi Eloi this story, they didn't finish the last part of what Rabbi Yishmael said. He didn't have the full psak. That's why he didn't get the full context. So that's why he was challenging his Rebbe, because he didn't understand it. That's why you always have to understand. Sometimes people say that the Rebbe said something or the posik said something, and you say, "Oh, you don't hear it directly from the Rebbe. You don't have the full context." And so that's why Rabbi Eli went to ask his Rebbe this thing. Shalchay Rabbi Avyasar Rav Chisda. So Rabbi Avyasar sent the question to Rav Chisda. Oh, not a question. Sent him a message. Rabbi Avyasar was in Eretz Yisrael. He sent to Rav Chisda, who was in Babylon. He says, "Gittin abai misham makan." He says, "Gittin that come from Eretz Yisrael, from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. In Tzarchom or Fanei Nachtam." Rabbi Avyasar said, if Gittin come from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, you don't need to say B'fanei Nachtam. Leima kasaver must be because of Fishaim Bekin Lashma. Must be because he's of the position that the reason why we say Fanei Nachtam is because they're not experts in Lashma in general. But in Bavel they are. And so therefore Rabbi Avyasar said you don't need to say it coming from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. Gemara says, but why? But this Rabba is like the Rabba. Even Rabba agrees that you need to be certifying it. And from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, you need to certify it. Everybody says, even Rabba says to certify it. So why does Rabbi Avyasar not require it? Given the Ika Rabbim to Salke V'Nachte, because there's a lot of people that travel from Eretz Yisrael, from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. The Salke V'Nachte, they go up and they go down. Mishkal Shifri, there's always going to be witnesses to certify it. So Rabbi Avyasar doesn't require it. So when Rabbi Yosef heard this, because Rabbi Avyasar is in Eretz Yisrael, he told Rav Chisda, don't make your agent say Fanei Nachtam. When he heard this, Rabbi Yosef says, Man leimel under Rabbi Avyasar bar Samcha. Why are you saying that Rabbi Avyasar is a bar Samcha? Why do you say he's an expert? Rashi says bar Samcha means Ra'u Esmochav. Why do you say we can rely upon him? And furthermore, Vod Ha'iu Deshalach Leil Rav Yehuda. And elsewhere, Rabbi Avyasar sent a message to Rabbi Yehuda b'nei Adam ha'olin misham l'kan in kimu ba'atzman v'yitnu ayela bezona v'ayalda machru b'yayim v'yishtu. Because of way below sirtut, we're now attacking Rabbi Avyasar to say he doesn't really know the halacha because he once sent a message and he wrote this message without sirtut. Sirtut is when you make a line. Now, it's halacha Moshe Sinai that you can't write a Torah scroll without lines on it. By the way, you have to be careful. If you write a Torah scroll and you make a mistake, you erase it and you rewrite it, but you have to redo the sirtut. So in a Torah scroll, you're required to do sirtut. On tefillin, you're not required to do the sirtut, but in a Torah scroll, you have to make the sirtut. So Ki himself said he sent this letter without sirtut. What was the content of the letter? It's just a side point, but it's interesting that the content of the letter was that those people come from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, they're fulfilling the verse that they're giving their child over for a harlot, and it's like they're selling their daughter for wine, and then they're drinking the wine. This is the verse from Yoel. This is the verse from Yoel. Rashi says, Shayum Mishteim Eretz Yisrael, Umanichin Nishosein Agunos, because they're going to do their business in Israel, and they're leaving their wives as agunos, and they're not fulfilling the mitzvah of puravu. Sirtut is making a line on the Torah scroll. Sirtut is making the line on the Torah scroll. But the Gemara is understanding that he should, not just a Torah scroll, the Gemara is understanding that he should have made a regular line here. But Amar Rabbi, it's like Shtayim Koson, if you write two words, any letter that you're writing, if you write two words from the Torah, then you could write it without the sirtut. Shalosh ain't kosvin, but 3 words you don't write without making sir to them. Masnisa tana shalosh kosvin, arba and kosvin, and in the Brisa we learned that 3 you can write without making sirta, but 4 you can't. Rabbi Yitzchak wrote more than 4 words from the Tanakh without making sirta. So why are you relying upon him? You can't rely upon him. So the Gemara says, "Who do you think just because he doesn't know this one teaching of Rabbi Yitzchak, then you have to write with sirtut that he's not worthy to rely upon, that he's not a great man? Okay, let's say he misunderstood something logically. Okay, I would understand that. Then we shouldn't rely upon him. He made a faulty analysis. But how Gemara? This was just a teaching, a tradition. The Gemara it's possible he was absent that day. He didn't get the memo about that one thing. That doesn't mean we can't rely upon him in general. And furthermore, I'll prove to you, says Abaye, that Rav Aviatar was a great man. Vod Rav Aviatar, who the iskim Maria Yade. God himself agreed with Rabbi Aviatar. Delsev Batizna Alav Pilacha. One of the most horrific stories in the whole Bible is the story of the Pilegesh Begiva. This is the sin that happened with the children of Israel, Judges chapter 19 through 21, eventually ended in a civil war. It's called the concubine of Gibeah, where this Pilegesh went astray. She left her husband, her quasi-husband, whatever a concubine's husband is called. She went down, and the husband went to bring her back. They were rejected. They weren't allowed to stay in a town in Benjamin, in Gibeah. And as a result, she was assaulted all night. And then he took her and he cut up her dead body and he sent her around and caused a civil war, or a civil war developed. So it says in that verse that the concubine left this Levite, that she left the Levite, and she goes and she runs to her father's home. So why did she leave her husband? Rabbi Aviatar Amar Zvuv Matzavah. He found a fly on her. Rabbi Yonasan Amar Nima Matzah. He found a hair on her. Rabbi Aviatar said that the husband found the fly. He found Elijah, and he said, he says, what's God doing now? God is involved with this story of the concubine of Gibeah. That's what God's doing. So by the way, what's the message here? God is studying the story of Pilegesh Begiva. This is the message. The message is whatever Torah we're studying, Hashem Yisbarach is studying at the exact same time. That's what we're doing. Our Torah study is being studied in the heavens as well. So Micah Amar, so what is God saying? So Amalei Eviatar b'ni kach omer. So God is looking over the sugya. He's saying, this is what my son Eviatar says. And Yonasan b'ni kach omer. This is what Yonasan says. So Eviatar says to Eliyahu Navi, Amalei chas v'shalom. How dare you say that? Mika Sveika Kamei. You think God has a doubt? He doesn't understand. He just has to cite the different opinions. He says, no, both are correct. Both of them are the living God. So that's why God is reciting both. So the Gemara says, what does it mean? So, and they're saying that both opinions are correct, even though it looks like they're arguing. First, he found a fly, and the man was not upset. The husband was not upset. And then Nima Matzav Hikbet, and then he found a hair, and he was upset. So the fly didn't push him over the edge, but the hair pushed him over the edge. And Amar Rav Yehuda Zvuv Bekara, he found the fly in the bowl. He found it in the cholent. And the Nima Bosa Makom, and he found the hair in that place, in the genitalia, because it used to be the practice of the women to remove their hair so as not to hurt their husbands. Zvuvmi Susa, the name of Sakonta. The fly didn't push him over the edge because it was just disgusting, and the hair was actually dangerous. Or Ikadame, Idi Bekaara, they both were in the bowl. Zvuv Unsa, the fly was not her fault, but name up Shiusa, but the hair was her fault. The hair was negligent. Amrav Chista. So therefore, for this reason, we see a person should not put too much fear on their household. Because the story of the concubine, the husband put a lot of fear on her, and as a result of that, tens of thousands died as a result of this, because he put too much fear on her, so she ran away, and it caused this whole escapade. And Amar Yehuda Marav Koamati Ema Yisera B'Soch Peso. Sofu Baladei Shalosh Averos. So says Rav, whoever puts too much fear in his household, in the end will come to 3 sins. Gili Arayus, he'll come to adultery, because what Rashi says is that come time for Nida, and it'll be too cold, and she'll be afraid to say to her husband, I didn't go to the mikveh because it was too cold. And so they're going to be together when she's in Nida. Of course, Shvichos Dam, murder, like here, that as a result of this, in the end, this terrible story, murder happened. Or sometimes she'll run away from him and she'll fall into a pit and die because she's afraid, and an accident will happen. Shabbos, or she'll be so afraid of him that she'll violate the Shabbos to make sure that her husband is happy, that she'll light the candles or cook after it gets dark because she'll be afraid of him. And so we see from here that if the husband puts too much fear in the household, very, very, very bad things will happen. All right, we'll stop here for today's Daf Yomi. If anybody has any questions, happy to address.